In the interest of time, I think we should get going. We're at the 5 minutes mark. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for choosing to spend your Sunday morning or evening, wherever you are joining from, with us. I know it's precious time over the weekend, but you're making the choice. We're grateful for that. This event has been organized in joint collaboration between IIT Alumni SoCal chapter and the Global IIT AI ML Forum. I know there's a lot of interest in this topic. We've received overwhelming, response in terms of registration. Before we kind of move into the meat of the session, I just wanted to quickly run through a few of the things. IIT Alumni SoCal chapter, I don't know if a lot of people really know, but there are 3,000 plus alumni of 23 IITs that we have in the Southern California. A lot of them are well accomplished in the corporate ladder, VCs, startup founders, investors. Just a little bit about the SoCal chapter itself. It was started in 2009, but really 2018 is when it became kind of official, nonprofit 501c3. It's completely run by volunteers, like myself and few folks who are on the line in the organizing committee, and we all have day jobs, and we have families as well, but we choose to bring these kind of valuable events for the community's benefit. We have, as part of the SoCal chapter, we actually have 5 tracks for this year's agenda: technology forum, entrepreneurship, career development, industry insights, and social connections. Here is the kind of QR code for other events that are coming up. We actually already did a startup boot camp earlier with a few of the accomplished VCs earlier this year. And then kind of a continuation of that coming up next month is valuation on more specifically about startups, but the topic kind of goes beyond that as well. There is an in-person event next month for kind of career networking, career workshop. And then we have our summer picnic coming up in June 7. So if you're in the area, please stop by and register and join. As I was saying, for this particular event, there's a lot of effort that went in. These folks, Tushar, Smita, Dhanashri, Anupam, and Priyanka, who's our president of IIT Alumni SoCal chapter, they put in a lot of, midnight oil to bring this event for the community's benefit. So do want to acknowledge the planning team for their effort here. And real quick, just few house rules. They're all pretty self-explanatory, but please keep yourself on mute. This meeting is being recorded. We do kind of want to get more and more questions from you, so please use the chat throughout the session. At the end of the session, we'll moderate those Q&A and pass on to our moderator and the panelists. If there are any unanswered questions at the end of the session, we'll make sure that they get answered offline after the session as well. Yeah, and we have a LinkedIn page. This is the QR code for that. For WhatsApp, you can DM on the LinkedIn page, and we can make sure that it's a good fit from like SoCal and alumni perspective. With that, let's move on to the session. Tushar Kant is the moderator of the session today. Tushar has been in the AI industry and product management across the tech giants, working at AWS, Meta, VMware, Dell, and Twitter. He has a deep research background. He's a published author, also co-founder of the Global IIT AI ML Forum. And yes, his specialization is Gen AI, computer vision, reinforcement learning, personalization, and that's why he's here to moderate the session today for us. Tushar, over to you.
Thank you, Shekhar. Want to really thank the ID Southern California chapter, Priyank Saxena, Smita Bagla, and the team. And of course, my co-founder, Ashish Bansal, who no matter how busy he is always there to support me in organizing these events. So let me start by introducing, going with Smita Bagla first. Smita is certainly a known name, not just in California, but across the world, both in Thai and IIT community. She has got double masters, one in mathematics from IIT Kanpur and one from Roorkee in computer science. I would have loved to get even one of them. It's really tough. Smita has worked in a variety of industries over a period of time, both in healthcare as well as in information technology. The healthcare, she was at United Healthcare, Amgen. On the technology side, she has worked for AT&T, Toyota, Cisco, Toyota, and a lot of other places. But in addition to this, she has been one of the founding members of Amrit Ventures, which some of you know basically helps US companies launch new products in Indian market. Last couple of years, she has been in a very unique role at Aligned Strategies. It's a management consulting firm. She used to be an interim chief operating officer and chief product officer of this organization as well, where she is basically helping companies strategize how should they play in the market, leveraging AI, Gen AI, and now DeepSeek. So we'll be getting to know a lot from her as the conversation progresses as we go through this, go through this event. Moving on from Smita to Ashish Bansal, a friend of mine for 30 plus years. Ashish, undergrad from IIT BSU in electronics and MBA from Kellogg. He has worked across three different countries in major roles, starting from Sapient and Hughes Network Systems in India, and then Sapient in Canada for a long period of time before he moved to Silicon Valley almost 10 years back when we launched the IIT IML Forum. You worked as a senior director first at Capital One, helping them figure out how to leverage artificial intelligence and data science in what is called subprime lending. From there, he moved to Twitter, where he basically led their recommendation systems work in the area of trends. Me and Asif were colleagues in Twitter at one point of time. From Twitter, he moved to Amazon Twitch, where he basically helped in recommendation systems for, the Twitch platform, which is related to the videos that users post and work your way through that. From there, he moved to Google, where he worked in Google Cloud in TPUs, basically figuring out how to leverage the hardware infrastructure of Google to the best possible extent. So he has basically worked all the way from software to the hardware stack. He has written a book in machine learning, which is very popular in natural language processing. We had events around that in the past. So we are certainly going to be banking upon him a lot to kind of understand the technical integrity of what has helped DeepSeek reach and beat OpenAI and other companies in the way they have. Now, between Smita, who is going to be talking about the business aspects of it, and Ashish, who is going to be basically looking at the deep technical details, Kaushal Misra comes somewhere in between. An accomplished person, undergrad in mechanical from IIT Roorkee, MTech in industrial engineering from IIT Delhi, and MBA from IIM Mumbai. He did not leave anything. He went to all the top schools in India. And he has worked at again galaxy of companies, starting from more on the Infosys, Accenture, and HCL side, which are the top IT services companies in the world. And then he worked in at it's called Mitsubishi's UFG Financial, which is a financial services company, launched in startup in the AI sector called Fuzzy Logics. And last couple of years, he has been at Microsoft, kind of leading their West Coast effort to figure out how essentially to work with some of the big strategic accounts in US West to kind of turbocharge Microsoft's presence in those accounts, leveraging AI, Gen AI product. And as you can imagine, once OpenAI came into picture in November of 2022, Microsoft Azure really took off. So he's going to give us a very good perspective from both enterprise side as well as on the SMB and startup side. So that galaxy of panelists, we'd like to start the session and want to welcome, and I can see we have a huge number of presence of alumni across the world who have joined, including from India. I'd like to start the discussion with Ashish. Ashish, one of the key things which basically caught the attention of the whole world when DeepSeek was released, 2 months back, was they came and claimed that they're going to train the model and get everything done and have a comparable performance to OpenAI just in $5 to $6 million. And there's a lot of debate whether the number is correct or not, what's going on. So we'd like to start from there because cost is a very important element in LLMs to understand what's your perspective around that cost number which came up, and how should we be looking at it from multiple different perspectives? So we'd love to hear your thoughts, starting with you, Ashish.
Thank you, Tushar. Thank you for everybody for having me. I am doing some research on figuring out this cost thing. It became a pretty big deal. I was working at Google where we were designing TPUs. So I had a pretty good understanding of what hardware it requires to train such models. For the sake of simplicity, the architecture that DeepSeek is using is called a mixture of experts. It is like having a panel where we have 3 or 4 experts on different topics. And depending on the question, a certain expert is routed that particular question. This means that if you think about the total number of neurons in the panel, it is like n times the number of people in the panel, right? This implies, though, that I need a lot more memory to store the model, but I may not need that much compute because only 1 expert or 2 experts are active at a given point in time. This is a fundamental part of the architecture of DeepSeek. I am not sure about if I can actually authoritatively comment on the dollar number. There's been enough debate in the industry whether that is accurate or not. There are a few different innovations that DeepSeek brought in, especially mixed precision training. So very simply, now I'm sorry if this is too technical for going on an early Sunday morning, but I'll try to make it simpler. If you look at a number, it's represented in 32 bits in a computer. I can represent it in FP16, so I cut down my memory requirement by half from 32 to 16. I could also represent it in 8 bits. So I cut it down even further. So one of the interesting things they did was, because their memory bandwidth was constrained, they used smaller precision numbers for training. So they got like 2x, 4x improvement in the memory bandwidth and consequently training. The last thing I will say without getting too much into details is that when we train a model, we just don't train it once. We have lots and lots of training runs. And then we do ablation studies to see which training run produced the most stable model. And that's the one we publish. So even if we take the 5 million number at its face value, that is not the one training run that they did. They probably did. I mean, at Google, we were doing dozens and dozens of training runs to get to a good model. So you can easily multiply it by a factor of 10 to 100 to get there, to accurately represent the cost. If we are talking about a financial model where I have to charge a user, I can't charge the user only for my last training run because I've incurred the cost of all of the training.
This is a very good perspective, Ashish, and that leads us. We certainly will get back on this topic a little more. Smitha, I want to listen to you. I mean, you kind of attend a lot of events, interact with a lot of people at CXO level, and who have been thinking of how to leverage Gen AI to kind of change their industry and how they want to work through. And then this DeepSeek has come in. First of all, love to understand from you this arrival of DeepSeek. What kind of market reverberations and implications you are seeing in terms of how the executives are thinking, both in the technology industry and enterprises, but also more in the SMBs and startups? And also would love to get some perspective from you about the VC industry, where also you are, very active in an own entity. Would love to hear your thoughts around that.
Okay, thanks. So one of the AI startups that I am currently part of, it's a very interesting AI startup. It is a 2-year-old startup in LA that has created an reliable customer-facing conversational AI assistants for the fintech market. And these work on everything: mail, voice, text, etc., for sales and support and everything. And, in fintech market, there are heavy restrictions on, privacy and accuracy and performance and all those things. So they currently have very privacy sensitive fintech clients, and they have some generous seed funding and are currently signing up more clients. Their product was based on Llama. Is based on Llama. They have a private VPN, private cloud, so security and stuff is very tightly managed. when DeepSeek came out, they started looking into DeepSeek. On the Microsoft Azure platform, they have like boundaries around it so that the data is not leaking. And they started using DeepSeek and saw that they could get the same accuracy as the paid models on all the metrics while they were being cost effective. So right now, that startup is leveraging the benefit of cost effectiveness by passing it to their clients, by getting an entry with many more fintech clients. And so that is like a game changer for startups and SMBs. And this kind of a thing we are seeing with many people, with not just us, like, this AI startup in LA. There are a couple of other startups who are in who have an e-commerce platform for consumer sales. They also can leverage it, both doing it. It's hard. It's like it has significantly leveled the playing field. What tech giants could do before, now startups and small businesses are looking forward to it. And it has also empowered them. From what I see here is they're being empowered, that they feel like if a company can use only so many GPUs and come up with such a great model, why can't we? So we don't have to rely on this extensive expenditure that only tech giants can provide. So there's a buzz of excitement, but there is also a buzz of like, caution over there. So people are attending towards more private clouds or controlled environments where they are trying DeepSeek. So startups definitely are embracing it, and more startups, people are coming up with ideas. In our Thai investment summits and others, we are seeing more AI startups coming up, which are using other models than, say, Llama or OpenAI, and also using DeepSeek to do their research and then go on. So that kind of business atmosphere for startups has changed. And even for small businesses, like, people who are like $100 million and others, they are moving towards it. It has sort of like opened them. They were kind of hesitant earlier to use Gen AI because they didn't know that they had to hire people, they had to do this. But with the reasoning model that learns from itself, they are prototyping a lot more now to see how they can modify the internal processes. And same sort of a thing is happening in executive level at enterprises also. So the enterprises that I advise, in that they have a sandbox in which they are trying DeepSeek for internal use. They use DeepSeek so that the data is not going out, but they're using it for internal use inside their company to see and matching it performance-wise with the other models that they have. They're not so concerned about cost effectiveness as they are concerned about performance and accuracy and other things. So that is the landscape that we are currently seeing in different. So it's like sort of democratize the AI, Gen AI. Like when ChatGPT came 2 years ago, it's brought it down to the masses and people were very excited. But advent of DeepSeek really is a representation of how a model that doesn't require so much cost, as well as training and everything, and learns from itself, can be developed by people who don't have megabucks. So it's sort of empowering the industry. So we are going to see a lot of like changes and new projects come up. People may not use DeepSeek, they may use DeepSeek, but it has sort of like unleashed a kind of a slight revolution in a way that people think that, hey, we can do it too.
Makes sense. And so I really love the word that you used, democratization of AI. So let's move to a gentleman, Mr. Kausal Misra, who has been with Microsoft and is now thinking of something new. Kausal, since you own Microsoft stocks, right? You'd like the world to use OpenAI and Azure. That's the best thing you can imagine, right? And now you're seeing this DeepSeek coming and disrupting that market, and you are now going to be, advising startups. Tell us what's happening. Tell us something different from Vasis and Smita has shared in terms of, it's like all the good things that you think when you're starting a relationship. Everything looks very gory. Tell us something interesting in terms of what the world has heard, but what you have seen on the ground working for Microsoft and now working with startups in terms of some of the meets, the challenges, the cons, the drawbacks that people need to be aware of before they get too excited about DeepSeek.
Sure. Yeah. the comment that whatever I'm going to say is my professionally speaking my personal comment, right? So it does not reflect the
Absolutely.
company's position in any way. Yeah, I've had the great fortune of seeing in last 2.5 years, companies from all spectrum, from independent software vendors, which are very large, companies like Snowflake and so on, Databricks, etc., and companies that are innovating products fast and furious. Two companies, that are on the other end of the spectrum, which are very conservative, like Smita pointed out, pharma companies and fintech companies. So the attitude, the way they act, the way they look at, innovation is very, very high. So there is no, broad statement that can be made, whenever a new technology comes in. So there are a lot of concerns that enterprises have. So first of all, when you look at the entire spectrum and the way I have seen, and I have worked on really very good use cases, across these spectrum of companies, independent software vendors very open to new technologies in adopting and essentially looking at anything, that can bring down the cost. However, DeepSeek has brought something very unique, which is reasoning that plays into several ways. So first of all, whenever new technology comes, we try to adapt it to low-hanging fruit first. So that is the approach that they take. And then they go to, let's say, innovation, trying to create competitive edges and so on and so forth. So the way DeepSeek has changed is obviously it has brought several new ways of innovating. That is number one. The other is it has brought reinforcement learning aspect, which means the way you interact with customers essentially, and the way you can learn is going to be far more productive, than was possible previously. So that is where you see. However, what I have seen is enterprises first of all use in very popular use cases that everybody knows in terms of operations and automation. These are the two areas that people see and attack, use technologies first. So that is where you see chatbots and co-pilots, being the first use cases where people are adapting it, and then the content generation. Obviously, this being it is not so good at content generation. So that is one thing. If you go to the other spectrum of companies, people have big concerns on it not having any good SLA guarantees. So that is where closed models, which have enterprise capability, those are still being preferred, and people are not using this for customer facing products. So you have to be conscious of that. And then if you look at domain specific, knowledge, although you can train DeepSeek with domain specific knowledge also, people are shy of using it, they are still trying to, look at the models, GPT-4 and O1, O2, O3, Mini, etc. Third category is the small and edge cases. Although DeepSeek promises a lot of very good edge cases in future, right now the model is still big. One thing people need to understand is the model is still big. If you try to apply it to edge devices, mobile devices, etc., you just so you're going to prefer 5.3 and Mistral models essentially. So these are the this is the spectrum of activities that I see, and there are when enterprises approach, they always look it in category of low hanging fruit first. This is where interaction with the customers, customer operationalization, how they can reduce costs, and these are also kind of from security perspective, not they are important, but from security aspects, and deploy the models productively there. So that's one. Before you go into research and innovation, most companies try to use it in development rather than in production. So that's where I have seen. And DeepSeek, naturally, with its human-like reasoning capability, that is where companies are. Another aspect, and probably from my experience, and it may benefit this audience, is you have to, first of all, humans are still very important. So it is not to replace human; it is only going to augment human. You look at the process, find out very critically with team effort which are the portions best suited for DeepSeek or any other reasoning model for that matter, right? So that's the important. Once you have cracked that part, that is when you can efficiently utilize part of the processes with DeepSeek. That is how I have seen it. Yeah, over to you,
This
Tushar.
is a very good perspective. And I want to pick up on two things here to, kind of dig a little deeper and get some thoughts and opinion from both Ashish and Smita. So starting with you, Ashish, first, mentioned something very interesting. He said you can use it for research and development, but not for production. You don't have a company backing it. You can't have SLAs. Now, Ashish, you are right now running a startup, Spark.ai, which is for basically leveraging Gen AI and other technologies to make it much more easier for kids to learn maths, right? About kind of reasoning, right? And I'm going to come to reasoning with unsupervised learning in a minute. But before that, what has been your experience dealing with products like Llama, which probably you guys are using as well? When you're building a company, you want to use these open source models much cheaper than closed source models. How does it work? Do we really need that kind of a support? Or are there, when you have an open source model with a lot of community supporting it, is that sufficient enough for you to basically run your company with that kind of crowdsourcing of support instead of relying upon one particular company? Would love to get your perspective before getting into this particular topic from a different angle with Smita in a minute.
We have worked with all models from Gemma to Quen to DeepSeek to Claude, Gemini, and also the GPT, of course. We built infrastructure that allows us to swap models in and out very effectively, because as a startup, and this field is still new in a sense that models are still evolving. So it is unclear if there is a dominant model. So we spent some time building infrastructure that allows us to do that. Our testing shows that unfortunately, none of the models, including DeepSeek, come close to what is required even for grade 8 maths. We believe that a lot of training data leakage or testing data, test set leakage has happened for these models. So when you see performance on GSM 8K or math data sets, a lot of those questions are actually put into these models. The trick also is when you look at the reports of benchmarks, you will see things like 8-shot, 4-shot, 2-shot, 6-shot, 5-shot responses. This means that the model gets 5 tries. And if any one of those 5 tries in a 5-shot architecture is correct, then it is deemed correct. This is not reflective of how I would like to teach my kids. Would you like a tutor that gets the answer correct in one of 5 tries? The problem is the kid doesn't know which of those 5 tries. If they knew, then they wouldn't need the tutor in the first place. So at the outside of these benchmarks, in real life, in our application, we have to do significant amount of fine tuning. Despite what everybody says about this model is very good, it can solve international math Olympiad problems and stuff, we do not see that in practice. I have a set of grade 5 math problems that all models get wrong on. It's in our private data set. We do not publish that because what will happen is these models will just ingest it in part of data set, will just memorize because they have so much capacity. It becomes even worse with MOE. MOE has even more memory capacity. So it is not an easy situation for us. Last thing I will mention is models are not inherently multimodal. And when we think of math, can you imagine math without geometry or drawing a picture? So if you give a very simple, take any math problem of a geometry problem, put it into DeepSeek and put it into GPT-4, the answer will be very clear to you which model is where. And the very simple way I will also say is, yes, there is a lot of excitement about DeepSeek when it came out. And it's not been that many months since it came out, right? It's been a few months. Where is it on LLMs arena today? So our memories don't, if we forget that in this space of innovation, DeepSeek is now at number 4 or 5. It's no longer number 1. What happened? If the innovation was so amazing, why didn't it continue? So we have to remember that in technology, any new product, it will keep innovating till we get to miniaturization. Till we don't get to miniaturization, there is more space for people to innovate on.
That makes complete sense. So, Smith, I would like to understand this from a slightly different perspective. And let me state the question properly. I did not do that in the beginning. So you have seen a lot of executives, not just about DeepSeek or Gen AI, but AI in general, and you have been in this area for a long time. So a lot of companies using different kind of AI technologies. There are closed source models, there are open source models. We have seen that. It's a general paradigm in software industry. Now, typically, one of the big selling points which enterprises made was, hey, my solution is not based upon open source. We are going to provide support for it, right? You can have SLAs for it. Then came AWS, my good old employer. They said, hey, we'll develop solutions which are based out of open source. Most of the solutions are based out of open source, but it will be AWS managed. Great. So we'll have support for you. And then there are like Linux did it for, Red Hat did it for Linux, right? Now, in case of AI, there are a lot of open source stuff. Like in case of Gen AI, you have Llama, for which there is not really any company stepping up to say, hey, it's going to be managed Llama from us, because, hey, OpenAI has its own software, Anthropic has its own. Why would they go and basically manage Llama for anybody? Azure is giving options to people to run Llama on their platform, but not supporting. From your vantage point, where you have seen industries and leaders making a decision, how much does it come into their factor, not about development, but actually products, and when they want to productize something in terms of leveraging an open source model, especially in Gen AI or AI space? And the reason I'm asking this is, yes, on the face, it looks like there is a challenge because, hey, there is no company supporting or backing it. But there's a huge community which is supporting it, right? It's like crowdsourcing of support. Would love to get your perspective either way to see how is that being tackled, and is that going to be a little bit of a challenge for widespread adoption of open source LLM or other models, be it DeepSeek, be it Llama or something else? Would love to hear your perspective.
Right. So again, there is a big difference when you are working with startups and SMBs as opposed to when you're working with big companies like OpenAI and others. So they are the moats. They thought they were the moats, right? Basically nobody could come near them and they can do it. Llama was open source. Meta gave it open source, but they were still charging for their APIs, and they still provide support for those kind of areas sometimes. But at Perplexity, when they provide APIs, even though it's open source, not Perplexity, DeepSeek. What I was going to say is that Perplexity has integrated DeepSeek models just when it came out. And it's one of the top LLMs anyway, and it's revitalized their web search, right? So, but what has happened with the open source is that more and more people start using it. They don't have the barrier of not being able to do it, cost barrier. It's only intelligence barrier, right? That how much they can use it. So when startups and other people are using it, they may not be that concerned about privacy in the beginning. They want to get the product right and everything and still manage and figure out what exactly is a comparable thing that when they have to move on to, they can move to a closed source model, because it's the capabilities they're trying to do. So the initial research, especially because cost effectiveness, proving to the investors that it's a viable product, it's going to be something that we can get. That is something that startups always are doing. And in this case, they still have areas where they can manage the security, they can manage the questions. So startups are willing to take that risk. Small, medium businesses may be a little bit hesitant, but then they're seeing based on the cost effectiveness, which route they can go. But tech giants will always use it just internally, open source, to test out the products internally, prototype them, and then they would. That is what that's what I have seen, and with all the conversations I've had with the executives of different companies. Does that answer your question, or would
Makes very good. No, you've given a very good perspective, balancing the benefits of open source, right? Startups do not much of money they want to play with, and what the big companies bring on the table. So that's a very, very interesting perspective. Thank you, Smita. We'll certainly will come back to you again. Ashish, want to ask you something very specific. In your initial answer about costs, you talked about mixture of experts. Great. You kind of hinted on reinforcement learning. I want to go really deep into it. My thought process is, and you can counter it, one of the key innovations which they've done in DeepSeek is reinforcement learning without supervised fine tuning, especially in the R10 model. In the R1 model, they have some cold start, but let's leave that for simplicity. Previously, whenever we had any of the models which worked, it was about doing supervised fine tuning in terms of training the models. And then you go from there, from the model doing inferencing, which is like kind of pattern matching, right? And then comes reasoning, where you do not do supervised fine tuning, but you let the model kind of figure out things through trial and error, which is great. And that kind of also, we had the discussion between me and you about how your company is thinking in terms of training the kids about that. Can you please give us a little bit more? And this is a good big number of technical crowd, so get technical as much as you want. Don't worry about it. How exactly this concept of not doing supervised fine tuning is helping build reasoning capability in reinforcement learning model? You get where I'm coming from? So you do not do supervised fine tuning, and that helps you build reasoning model. It's like you are not a kid is preparing for JEE exams. You're not giving him a lot of Agarwal classes and quota classes. You give him limited amount of information and then give him questions to prepare and force him to think about every question from fundamentals instead of doing pattern matching with the questions they may have prepared for. Let me stop. Over to you, Asif.
So last night, because I know you're going to ask me hard questions, I had to go through the DeepSeek paper again.
Thank you.
Tushar and I go way back, so we have this intellectual discussion all the time.
Yeah, it's very intellectual, as you can see.
Except on a chai ki tapri, we are very
absolutely.
So I'm not entirely convinced that they didn't do SFT. So the problem with foundation models is it doesn't respond to you unless you do SFT. Supervised fine tuning is mandatory for it to answer your question. When I was at Google, we had access to like the base model that was before fine tuning. It was called Mina. So if you asked it a question like, what are the top 5 places in Paris? It will respond with a bunch of questions like, what are the top 5 places in Rio de Janeiro? What are the top 5 places in Delhi? What are the top 5 places in Munich? It doesn't understand the fact that you are asking it to respond to a query. That behavior only comes from supervised fine tuning. Because then we teach the model that you are not supposed to give me other questions like this. Then it understands that I need to respond to a question. Thus, the reasoning aspect of this model is in some ways a bolt-on. And even though it sounded like that is what is happening, or this is a key innovation, this has been under production cases for a long time. I mean, this is the same tech that you have seen with AlphaGo that DeepMind demonstrated many years ago, and even with Alpha Geometry and with O1 reasoning. The thing is that models in an LLM sense or in a foundation model sense, they only have one direction of time flow, which is once they've generated a token, it is not possible for them to go back. And this causes them to get stuck at times. So the solution for that is, I don't know how, if I'm assuming most of you have used DeepSeek quite a bit. So if you read through the reasoning log, it will actually go down a wrong path in the reasoning log, and then at a point in time later, it will say, wait, I think I'm going down the wrong path, and then it will correct itself. I don't know if people have observed that. So that behavior is coming from a set of logic and prompting instructions that have been given to, which says that if you get to this, and if you get to a very quick answer, then you have to go back and check and so on. So some of this emergent behavior that we are seeing is something that has been trained into the model. I know I'm not directly answering your question, Tushar bhai, but I don't want to get into too much of details or specifics into the RL or the supervised fine tuning versus the reasoning and on this part. But this, if you think about the process, right? So we have a foundation model, which is pre-training. Then we have supervised fine tuning, which is making sure that it is useful, right? Everybody has access to Wikipedia, but it is not useful if you can't query it and it can't give you an answer, right? So the supervised fine tuning is the second part. But then everybody might prefer a different type of answer, or there may be a set of steps to get to the final answer. So in there, it is important to look at RL as a way to do from white tree. Can you figure out what are the right paths to go versus the paths that you don't have to go, and then start the generation of tokens from the LLM. So this is the way I feel like they have made it work on both sides in a very cost-effective fashion.
That makes complete sense. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, but I'm not going to have you put you on the spot to answer it. I'll give you a couple of minutes to think while I ask Kausal a question, kind of making your life easy today. So the question I want to really understand from you when I come back to you after speaking to Kausal is, there is this whole concept in reasoning about going step by step. And I was in a conversation with another guy 2 days back, is sometimes in the traditional model you miss it. That whole step by step reasoning concept, which is what most of the engineers did when we prepared for our exams or in the undergrad or later on in our job. It seems DeepSeek brings up that, and we kind of inculcate the trial and error method, but also that step by step reasoning kind of stuff. Would love to understand if that has anything to do with DeepSeek's real capability. That's one. Second is, I think that you have already answered. Since it's mixture of experts, we don't need that much of computing power. That probably makes sense. But that reasoning aspect of it, we'd like to hear a little bit more from you, especially given that you're also trying to, right now in your startup, focusing upon kids to learn that capability also, so that they do not have to solve 100 problems before appearing for an exam. I will come back to you in a minute, but Kausal, I have a question for you. You've seen the world, and again, I know in a professional setting, you're giving personal opinion. The event is recorded. Nobody's going to sue you. I'm going to be standing behind you, so don't worry about it. But here is an interesting perspective. When you work with some of the larger companies, you saw the companies coming and leveraging, LLMs on public clouds and basically building business models out of it. Now, DeepSeek, Llama, and whatever, they're kind of democratizing the AI. I'm stealing the word from Smita for SMBs and startups. Which sectors or verticals or use cases you think are going to become attractive for startups to be launched by entrepreneurs leveraging this? A lot of people here who are not just interested in understanding how DeepSeek is working, they want to leverage it, especially our alumni who want to focus it to build companies, make a lot of money, and then never come to these kind of events. So tell us, what kind of new use cases, startups you think are going to be enabled and become attractive opportunity for people to essentially think about launching something new from your perspective and vantage point.
Sure. Yeah. So if you see, I talked about that spectrum, on one end of the spectrum, you have independent software vendors for their livelihood, which means, that is their USP. And then you have in between, transportation, oil and gas, and retail, or other retail, which is more experimental usually, and that's a little bit more conservative. Then comes financial, and then comes the pharma and life sciences companies, which are heavily regulated and are very conservative in the approach. But within this spectrum, you will see innovation pockets and internal use cases versus external use cases where there is a touch point for customers. So that is how you have to understand the whole industry segment, and that is where I see the behaviors changing drastically, actually. So I feel, if the more you go towards the left of this versus and less burdened by the regulatory aspect. Everybody, when you put things in production, you are always bound by security and some regulation and some responsibility. But as you go right, this burden increases so that they are not going to be the first to utilize technology, at least, right? There are use cases, for example, in protein synthesis, etc., where innovation is there and you can use a lot of iteration and reasoning models and so on and so forth. Those apart, wherever touch point is there, probably experimental about it. So I will see the most innovation happening in creating new softwares, new reasoning models, trying to predict, and one point I will go back to, what Ashish mentioned, very beautifully is uh, reinforcement learning. There is another aspect called emergent behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Models, but once you freeze a foundation model, the emergent behavior is also frozen, more or less, right? You never teach to tell it a joke, but it tells a joke nevertheless. Case of DeepSeek, what it has brought is through reinforcement learning, there is a possibility of emergent behavior that even that also does not know and you also do not know. And that applies to things like customer behavior, customer interaction. For example, when several hundreds of customer agents are interacting with customers, there is through reinforcement learning emergent behavior, which means it might suggest you new processes altogether. You never know that. So that kind of experimentation is going to happen wherever there is customer interaction in places like retail. That is where you see a lot of use cases happening. And then in manufacturing, especially, I forgot manufacturing. Manufacturing also is going to be very, that is where you would see a lot of new startups coming, where there are edge cases where there is possibility of having autonomous decision making, where you put audience devices, there is a likelihood of interacting with customers and learning from it, and have even emergent behavior, coming out of it, where model itself decides, forget about being told or trained on or whatever, supervised fine tuning, etc. was there. This is probably the course of action given you allow it to act on it. So I see those pockets essentially, benefiting the most. Especially, I'm very excited to see the edge use cases. Someplace, sometime, a robot can come and fold my laundry. Hopefully, can happen actually in future.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good.
Can
You're
I
gonna-
add to it?
Please, Smita, please. I was going to
Sure.
come to you.
Yes, okay. So I see a lot of use cases happening in healthcare and wellness at this time. With models becoming much better, and some of like DeepSeek does not use SFT, but it comes back. It is really useful in drug discovery and getting things together. So there are a couple of startups that have done extremely well in health. Like I think there's a company called In Silico Medicine that I heard about that has basically it has used DeepSeek to develop drug modeling systems. But health and wellness is one of them. And then in retail, one of the companies that I'm helping with, they are using it to create an e-commerce platform, for consumer goods. And they are going to use it internally to manage the inventory as well as externally to understand the customer behavior. So their business plan is all around how to leverage something like, Gen AI capabilities to help them without having too much data, to help them into creating this wonderful e-commerce platform. So a
Makes
couple of
sense. Makes sense. So before we turn on to audience questions, I know audience has a lot of questions. Asif, giving you the last, you have the last word to give us some deeper insight into the reasoning aspects, especially multi-step reasoning, in reinforcement learning, by DeepSeek, what's going on, and how kind of it mirrors with the way we want our next generation to think going forward, kind of bringing the human thought process and reinforcement learning thought process together. Give us some idea, give us some views, and then I'm going to turn to the audience questions. I have the list. Thank you, organizing team, for getting everything done in real time. So please, Asif, with you.
Thank you, Tushar. Reasoning, you can think of reasoning as a multi-step process for any of these models. And I'm going to talk about generally how reasoning type models work, whether it is O1, whether it is Gemini Flash Thinking, or whether it is DeepSeek. The rough architecture is the same for all of these. We always start with a chain of thought prompt. So the chain of thought basically says, how do you actually break down the problem into different ways that you can say, okay, what should be the first step, what should be the second step, and so on. The second important thing in the chain of thought prompting process is having tool use. So I'm trying to demystify. It's going to sound very, very mundane once I'm done with it, but that's my objective in life, to simplify things so that people can understand easily. In tool use, one of these steps might say, can I check this, or can you want to check it? And then I invoke a reasoning model, which is an RL algorithm, to say, okay, am I going too deep in a certain path? Is this the right path? Do I have a reward for doing this? Because that's the RL aspect of it. Let's say that you are solving a math problem. You have to compute the hypotenuse of a right angle triangle. Hopefully, this is not hard math for anybody here. Everybody remembers the Pythagorean theorem.
Hopefully, yeah. Otherwise, I'll have to think.
Yeah, there will be a test at the end of this event. If you don't pass, we will have to send you to Star Spark to train you in math again. So if you're doing the Pythagorean theorem, you have to know, okay, what are the two lengths? You have to square them, you have to add the squares, and then you have to compute the square root. So these are the 3-4 steps. What if you don't know one of the lengths, right? So you have to outline these steps, and then you have to execute them, and then evaluate all of these different things to say, okay, am I going on the right path? Will this help me get to the solution or not? And in these specific areas, LLMs can actually be very confident in predicting the next token. And by intercepting, rather than I have the LLM predict the next token, you invoke a reasoning system to go through a reasoning tree and provide the output of the reasoning tree back to the LLM to then continue its. I have a fundamental issue with from an education perspective with models reasoning versus humans reasoning. So what we are trying to do is getting humans to reason. What everybody in the world, including people on this call, are trying to do is to get models to reason. These are two fundamentally different pursuits. Getting humans to reason implies that I have to give just an adequate hint, which will vary based on the human, to help them understand what the next step will be. So we are not trying to say we will make LLMs so good that they will solve every human math problem. That is not our pursuit. Our pursuit is to make humans be able to do critical thinking and reasoning by themselves and do it in a democratized way, in a different use of the word democratization in my context, where every human on the planet has the ability to learn math. Now, that is not the objective of these training. And the subtle difference that a lot of people don't appreciate is everybody wants to train models on right solutions, how to solve a question correctly. In our use case, we train models on how to solve a question incorrectly. Because opportunity to learn only happens when a student makes a mistake. If you solve everything correctly, what am I going to teach you? There is no point in teaching. You already know how to solve it, right? So this is the completely counter training to what every model has been trained on, is to detect. If you think of very good teachers, by looking at your answer, they will tell you, oh, you made a mistake 6 steps ago. Because they are able to find your, backtrack your chain of reasoning. That is what good teachers do, right? But that's not how reasoning models today work. And that's why we hope that we have a good business to do. Tushar.
That makes a very good understanding. I'm going to move to the Q&A session now. I'll be posing questions. I have the list. Thank you, Dharansri and others, for preparing it. I've got everything on my fingertips right now. By the way, 2 quick comments. You made a very interesting statement about doing step-by-step reasoning, and sometimes when you miss one step, you basically really get into trouble. I still remember my 4th semester paper in my undergrad, 1995 May, in optimization technique in IDBHU, where I had to do iterations as part of optimization techniques L semester exam. And I made a mistake in, kind of doing the first calculation, and then instead of converging, my answer diverged. So it's very critical in general in human thinking and machine thinking to make sure every step is done. Otherwise, you'll start diverging instead of converging, which, as you know, both in model solving and in life can lead to a very different destination than what you actually imagined. Thankfully, I reached the right place in my life, not sure about my answer. But, one of the first questions people have, and Ashish, Smita, Kausal, whoever wants to pick it up, is, once the DeepSeek model came in and you look at their paper, especially the, R1 model paper that they have, they talk about something called model distillation. As soon as they talked about model distillation, the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman started jumping, saying that, you know what, they have basically distilled OpenAI and created DeepSeek model, which certainly is not true. Would love to understand, both for myself and on behalf of the audience, what exactly is model distillation? How is it different from creating a smaller version? Give us some input and insights. So starting from Ashish and my good friend Kausal, and then of course, Smith, I would love to hear your business perspective also in terms of how model distillation has been used, if you have any perspectives in terms of building new businesses and going forward. One thing I would certainly clarify for the audience is there are some legal aspects to it, but typically I think model distillation is fine as long as you're using it for your own internal use cases and working your way through. But if you distill somebody else's model and start selling it to make money, that gets into a legal zone. But leaving aside the legality of it, Ashish, Kausal, love to hear from you the technical aspects of fundamental concept of model distillation, and Smita, your market view in terms of how that has been used to build businesses over a period of time. Over to the panelists.
Yeah. So I'll let Ashish respond and then probably I'll go next.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll do a very quick.
You can tell the the mistakes he has made, because that's what he wants to learn. Go ahead.
I will only give a very short overview of what model distillation is, and then turn over to Kaushal and Smita to add. Let's say that we have a very large, very capable model like GPT, trillions of parameters. It does well on a number of tasks, but it is probably over parameterized. I want a smaller model that has equivalent or similar performance. So let's say that if I can reduce the model size in half for 2% drop in accuracy, that trade-off may be quite worth it for me, right? So let's say I take a trillion parameter model, I can move it to a 500 billion parameter model. My compute costs, etc., have roughly gone half. But if I have only a 2% drop, then that difference in model performance and cost versus accuracy is a trade-off that's worth it. And different businesses will decide wherever this trade-off works out for them. The way for model distillation is well known. One of the most common algorithms is called teacher-student. We have a smaller student model. We give the query to the big teacher model. It generates a query. It generates the response, which we assume is the right response because we assume that the teacher knows how to solve these types of problems. And then we give that answer to the student and say, hey, now memorize that this question is now the answer for this question is this. And then we just do this in pairs. This is what basically DeepSeek did. They used GPT-4o as the teacher and their model as the student. And this is where some of the ethic questions came in for there. But I'm not going to go into that. Generally, there is a loss of ability or loss of generalized ability when you do distillation. So people try to do distillation for specific areas as broad distillation, even though sometimes they do try to do broad distillation if you don't care about tail queries. Tail queries are the oddball questions that they are. So that's the quick summary of distillation.
Absolutely. Kausal, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, that's why I was leaning on Ashish, to give the fundamentals. And apparently, I have papers to this session. I did a lot of preparation on this as well. Excellent Booz Allen paper, that probably I would encourage everybody to look at. I'll probably post the link also. They really hit on the advantages as well as what DeepSeek is and what probably it is hiding or has not publicly admitted and so on and so forth. And that's why you see the whole excitement dying down also a little bit. It has its own nice little pocket, right? For example, popularizing teacher student model and so on and so forth. So one application where teacher student model will shine is if you have a domain specific knowledge base in your company or in an enterprise. That is where you're going to see use something like a reasoning model like DeepSeek to educate it on what it is. A very large model, let's say if you go to a financial company, they have a huge amount of data. Now that data is simply impossible to put that into reasoning model. You have to go through fine, etc., which is very expensive. Teacher student model, on the other hand, can learn quite a bit of it, like Ashish mentioned. And I have also read that in some cases the way a student learns, sometimes through reasoning and reinforcement learning, is it can even beat the original foundation model, because that doesn't have as good reasoning capability. So teaches the students become smarter, which we see in reality, which is true for this case also. So specialized domain specific, whether it is legal domain, education, or manufacturing, for example, customer centric roles in retail and so on. So they are going to benefit and adapting it, far more to their advantage than probably in other industries. However, that said, is still this particular adaptation is confined to highly remunerative, such as financials, etc., where they want to really crystallize all the stocks knowledge, all the future prediction capability into a small, long model. Try to get the predictions out and so on. In retail, for example, forecasting In case of supply chain, trying to predict failures and recover from it, and healing capabilities, etc. That is seeing, this kind of capability more. Others are still waking up to the potential of this one. Yeah.
Makes sense. So, Smith, I would love to hear your thoughts in terms of
Sure.
how you've seen distillation playing out in the real world in terms of companies being built and products being sold.
So startups really love it. Why? Because it requires less computational power. It's a smaller model. It can be deployed over a variety of platforms, like mobile as well as this. So companies are startups, and it can help with the faster prototyping that startups and SMBs are always checking to grow, right? So at this model distillation is something we used to call like, MVP in older terms, in a way, and using like some capabilities to make that possible so that people have something that they can use. And startups can try out their products and make sure and make quick changes to it in order to be able to do it. So model distillation in a way has been useful and beneficial for startups. And going with what Ashish and Kaushal have said, that basically I'm sorry, there was like an echo. So like
No worries.
what Ashish and Kaushal had said, that that they can be the teacher-student model in this. So that will grow along with the company as it grows. So they can use better resources. They have more accessibility and things like that. So um, I feel that startups right now, I've seen a couple of them are excited about it, but that is what has been used in my experience at different startups and SMBs.
That makes sense. So now I'm going to turn to another question. So there is one area where we differ very forcibly or vehemently with our current president of US, and that is on diversity and inclusion. So, we typically want to have more women in these organizations, in these events. We want to encourage them. So I'm going to turn to one of the, known alumni in our IIT community, Dr. Katyani, who basically asked a question on the chat about security of LLMs. So let me, let me first rephrase a little bit, and then we'll like Katyani to have you add if anything has not been answered on the chat. So, we talked about SLAs for these open source models. And one of the key points there is people forget it's not just about performance, but also about security. Security of data that is used for training, security of model, security of results, all of that get into picture. So, Katyani, anything that you feel you would like to add above and beyond what people may have answered for you on the chat? Would love to get your perspective. By the way, Katyani spent years at Intel doing work in the area of security and including applying GenAI to security. So would love to actually get your thoughts into this question to have the panelists answer it.
Thank you so much, Tushar. I think there was actually some good discussion on security. And it was great to see, yes, at least people believe looking at the code, there are no loopholes. So a lot of those did get answered. But I think what I wanted to dig a little deeper into is, and in some sense it goes beyond DeepSeek, is, as you mentioned, security is frequently overlooked, and it is a very big issue. And that is where I know, like somebody mentioned that, and there are two aspects to it. One is are the models secure? How easily can you tamper it? And I know some people are saying that, yes, in the companies, we put guardrails, external guardrails. But again, there are many different ways that you can tamper a model, including there are times where you can even, like, if it is inferencing or recognizing a picture, you can add some elements to the picture and then completely change what the model, gives you or answers. So, and then also in terms of how easily is it, are you able to add in biases or do a few things to where it completely changes how it answers? And these are all very real aspects. And as these AI models become more commonplace, we're talking about even like medical. I know there's always be human in the loop and all that, but nevertheless, I think security becomes even more important. And that's where what I'm thinking is, eventually, I know we're talking about cost and performance, so maybe we need to also start evaluating these models on security. I mean, yes, you can always add guardrails on the outside, but what inbuilt or built-in security do these models have, and how does how do the different models compare? So that's where if the panelists can share
Makes
some
sense. So,
light,
yeah,
some
so
thoughts
I'm
on
going to
that.
make it even more interesting. This is, I would say, a little bit of an out of syllabus question for panelists, which is good. The panelists will try to answer it. But after panelists have taken a shot at it, if there are security experts, and AI ML Forum is known for crowdsourcing knowledge, if there are security experts who want to take a crack at it, after panelists have put their thoughts, and especially if their background in security, if they can help us get a deeper understanding of the whole space, especially answer both for Katyani and for ourselves, I'm going to open to that as well. So, and whenever you are, if you are, kind of stepping up to answer this question after panelists, we would like you to switch on the camera, number one. Number two, we would like you to introduce yourself in one line, not the whole LinkedIn. Your name, campus, branch, and year of graduation, if you feel comfortable, especially if you're from one of the IITs. If not, just your name and, what your role is. That's it. So over to the panelists to discuss about security of, the security aspect of LLMs in general, but DeepSeek in particular. This is probably the topic for a whole event itself, but panelists, please go ahead and take a crack.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, I can start, and obviously,
Please go ahead, Kaushal.
with great respect to my fellow panelists, I'm sure they
Absolutely.
also bring wealth of knowledge in
Not,
this
not,
space.
not sure Ashish deserves so much of respect as Smita, but please go ahead.
So coming from Microsoft, security is one aspect I didn't touch so far because it's security comes first, and Microsoft happens to be, one of the partners of US, the largest attack company in the world actually, and therefore it was in 50 time frame. They said, why not this into emanate? That is why not we build our defenses, turn it into security, and put it out there for others also to benefit. And therefore, today it happens to be the largest security company. If you look at its security earnings and so on, is the largest of any company in the world. That's it. Naturally, in my experience, when I interacted with the companies, one thing stood out very clearly, and Microsoft was pushing it, but because companies were asking it, anything that gets into production, and it does not need to be pharma or finance companies, it has to be secure. Why? Very intelligently, Satya and everybody downwards, from there, they always emphasize first, before even the models were designed, and there are talks for that, designed first, responsible AI framework was created. It was not the other way around. In the responsible AI framework timeline, if you see, it is 2015 and 16, and OpenAI models, GPT transformer itself, thanks to Ashish Vaswani, it came in 2017, right? So these are extremely important. Any company that touches anything in production, it wants it to be secure. That is one. Now comes the LLM security, and especially DeepSeek security. DeepSeek, if you're accessing it through API and through chatbot, through browser-based application, data residency is the biggest question. That is why a lot of companies have, without even going to the detail, have banned DeepSeek altogether. Although, in my opinion, that is not the correct approach. But if you were to host it locally on your machine or through some cloud service, completely safe, because data residency is guaranteed in location of your choice. If you're in Europe, otherwise the US. Now, next point is all the CSPs, right, including Satya and heads of Google and AWS, etc. They included with open arms the new models that come up, including DeepSeek. So it is when you look at the catalog, there are three kinds of security which are guaranteed by cloud service provider. One is the models that they develop, which means models, for example, for EVA, etc., which they are developing. They provide end to end, including what goes into training, what gets trained, and so on. So there's the largest security parameter that will be OpenAI and so on. And for Google, they'll provide the similar guarantees end to end of the model performance, etc., for Gemini models and so on. Now, next comes the models where weights are open out in the field, for example, Llama, etc. That is the next level of guarantee that CSPs provide, limited from the first one, control on how it is, but how it behaves. Third level of guarantee is provided to the models where they have absolutely no control in terms of weights, or models which are closed. So you have to always see what kind of models you're choosing from the catalog, what kind of security you are getting. LLM security is itself, I can actually take a session on that. It's a totally different game. And responsible AI from, so once you choose a model, you're guaranteed by cloud service providers that your data is not going to be used. That is a guarantee that every cloud service provider. However, if you were to, let's say, go for OpenAI, they do not provide that guarantee. DeepSeek, if you go through chat, they do not provide that guarantee. So always be mindful of that particular part. Yeah. Thank you.
Makes sense. Ashish, Smita, please, your thoughts.
I can add a little bit on this, is that
Sure.
security, as we know, we always have to be very, very cautious about security. It's not just LLMs, it's all cybersecurity attacks and everything. Security is very important. So first of all, there has to be some sort of a governance that we follow in terms of security. We have to strengthen our governance policies in a way that, and also we have to check as to where I did some research on it just before our things, because security is a big thing for us. So we have to stop the unauthorized model access. We have to make sure that we are checking for backdoor attacks. We are making sure that we are securing we have a hybrid infrastructure. We want to make sure that we have to continuously test our boundaries and make sure that nothing is going across. And even in when we do synthetic data generation in AI, then also security is of a concern, because synthetic data can still have the patterns that can really somebody could see and get to the actual data itself. So being in healthcare and medtech and those patient data, you have to be extremely careful, and policy and very, very keen eye to it. It's extremely important in the businesses that I work with.
Makes sense. Ashish, your thoughts before I get into some specifics on security.
Yeah, I think Mehtaji and Kaushal have covered bulk of it. I want to just highlight a couple of things. We must not conflict privacy with security. A lot of times these two get conflicted, but these are two independent aspects that both need to be handled. When we say security, we are essentially dealing with, do I get the right copy of the model? The model is just a set of weights. It's a matrix in a fancy form. The checksums, etc. process is there. So it has been around for a while. How do you download software and know it has not been tampered with? So there are processes that are already existing that solve for that. The harder part about security is, does the model have inherent biases that you may or may not know, or it may cause malicious aspects? That is becoming increasingly and extremely hard to evaluate, because you don't know the extent of the training data, whether you use an open model. And I do not want to call these open source models, because none of these models are open source. They're open weight. They're called open models. So whether it is an open model or a closed model, it is next to impossible to verify. So the only thing you can do is run it in, again, this is something that security practitioners are very used to doing. How do you run code in a sandbox environment so that it doesn't have privileges beyond what it is are being asked to do? So just you follow those practices is what I would say.
Good. So before I open this question for the audience to answer, I have one specific question for you, Ashish. And that is, would you like to comment a little bit on these two aspects of LLM safety or security, prompt injection and jailbreaking? Not that you have to, but if you have any thoughts, please do. And then I'm going to open it for the audience to answer if they want to add anything in this area. And I want to tag this question along with whatever Katyani asked, to comment about prompt injection and jailbreaking, two key safety and security aspects in LLMs in general and DeepSeek in particular, please.
So I think that is again the area of safety. So we are now getting into nuances in terms of discussion, right? So there is security, safety, and privacy. Then there is ethics and bias. So they are all interrelated, but not exactly the same. So we must be very clear which aspect are we trying to do and handle. Why is jailbreaking a model really a big problem? Because we believe that we have proprietary information that may leak if our prompt gets jailbroken. And at this point, almost all prompts have been jailbroken by somebody. So, so it's not like, I think at some point, I used to work with a CISO, and his comment to me is Ashish, there are only two types of companies in the world: companies who know who have been hacked, and companies who don't know that they have been hacked. So that is sort of a very aggressive security posture. So I think we need to plan. We can do whatever we can to do something, but ultimately the problem for us computer engineers is that we are now dealing with a probabilistic world. We have been so used to dealing with a deterministic world that the code that we write, it will always perform in a certain way in certain circumstances. Now, the same input may generate three different outputs at three different points in time. And that makes our life very hard as computer scientists, because we are not used to dealing with a probabilistic world. In this world, we must also examine what happens, what is the consequence of prompt injection or let's say jailbreaking. In enterprise or specific use cases, the implication may not be much. I think those things become very, very distinct for popular general purpose chatbots. So one of the ways to get through this is have stronger guardrails and narrower use cases, as opposed to spending inordinate amount of time on jailbreaking. I don't think anybody asks the question, what happens? So what if you know my system prompt? Like, if somebody knows my system prompt, like, great, good for you. Like, it doesn't really change anything. Like, why do I need to do so many things? Because what you can do is you can fine tune your model. Once you fine tune your model, you don't need to have such a big system prompt anymore. So there are like other ways to deal with these situations. So Tushar bhai, I'm fundamentally questioning the premise of your question in our old style, to say that maybe new paradigms are needed, and we get too hung up on prompts and things like that, where there are alternate ways of designing the solution where these problems themselves are no big deal for people.
Makes sense. You're basically saying that change the perspective in which you're looking at the problem, and they will go away. Not actually go away, but you look at it from a different perspective. Since security is a very important topic, I want to open it to audience. If anybody wants to, no more questions, but wants to answer the question that has been raised by Katyani and the kind of additions which I have done, or they have any specific clarifications to what Ashish, Kausal or Smita have made. Any volunteers who want to step up? Of course, on the fly. Switch on your
Tushar,
camera, introduce yourself in one single line, and then answer the question.
Tushar, this is Gaurav Pal here. I'm
Gaurav,
from
switch on your
IIT.
camera first. I can't see you.
Tushar, I'm sorry I'm driving, so this was too compelling a topic. So I will.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
will.
Just introduce yourself in one single line. Campus,
Yeah,
branch, and year of graduation, if you feel comfortable.
yeah. I'm from IIT BHU, 1994 CS. Gaurav Pal.
Mhm.
And so, really, what I wanted to offer is I've worked for the last 17 years around. I'm based in Washington D.C. Worked around security and compliance, particularly for government consumption of IT systems. And so, to the
Great.
point around AI security, the paradigm, I think, as Ashish said, is changing. And so, all of the focus right now tends to be on what we call, black box testing versus white box testing. So, a lot of focus is around, model testing, or prompt firewalls, or training data. Those are all in the area of what we would call white box testing, where I think we are moving from an AI security and safety standpoint is what we call black box testing, meaning we apply different paradigms, things like psychological tests, etc., to the overall system, and then move to a model of continuous monitoring. So just like a human being, if you're, we have a science around things like insider threat. So those different models are now being applied to AI systems, where an AI system is analogous to a person, and how do you monitor and manage their behavior over a period of time. So I just wanted to offer that
No,
perspective.
that's a very good, it's a very good perspective. And I do want to make a quick cheeky comment, since it's a little bit 1.5 hours. We have a distinguished alumnus of IIT BHU and IIM Bangalore, respected Ramesh Srinivasan sir, who is on the call. He has been CEOs of multiple companies. Ramesh sir, one thing is you'll notice you're a 80s, early 80s alumnus, but the quality of IIT BHU's alumni in 1990s is still good, has been maintained. So hopefully you're proud of us. So thank you. I had to make that statement. But thanks for joining us from Las Vegas. Those who know Sanjeev Goyal and Ramesh, they both live in Las Vegas, but they're very different lifestyles. So just want to clarify. But thanks for having you here. Friends, I have a very interesting question to ask you, and that is, somebody asked us that kind of rocked the market on the day DeepSeek was released. NVIDIA lost $600 billion. The question one of the audience has asked is very interesting, and this is, given that DeepSeek can be trained with lesser amount of computational power, does it mean the need for GPUs will also go down, or is there a possibility that instead of using a bunch of GPUs, you actually can use a bunch of CPUs, or rather what you call vCPUs or virtual CPUs? So is the dynamics of the market for the hardware that is used for training these models, especially LLMs, is going to go through another round of fundamental shift when the gravity of power shifts from the GPU providers and manufacturers to the CPU providers, which means that AMD will actually emerge as a key player in this game, since they have their pie in both the kind of cake, as you say, and then go from there. Panelists, any comments, especially Ashish, since you work for the TPU team in Google itself? And of course, love to hear from Kausal and Smita. And after that, anybody in audience who wants to offer a very specific answer to this. I know this question is not something which people at NVIDIA would be flattered with, but would love this to be addressed for sure.
So I don't have any good news for the CPU people who keep trying to sell to me that I can train ML models on CPUs. This very simple reason is the computer architecture. We are talking very, very fundamental computer architecture. SPMD is what makes GPUs so good. GPUs are a special purpose compute machine. They do very well at a certain task. And that will always be true in hardware. If you design a piece of hardware that only does one task, you can make it do very well, but it will work very poorly on other classes of tasks. CPUs are built as a chip that does very well on a large number of tasks, but that means that at any given task, it doesn't excel at. So I don't think there is any hope of getting from CPUs to do training. Inference, yes, you can probably do inference if you train a very small model and you don't have to deal with large batch sizes and stuff like that. You are putting one request at a time through. CPUs can do inference, and they have been used largely. CPUs are used for inference even today. At Google, like 90% of our, prior to the Gemini era, 90% of the inference happened on CPUs because they were able to simplify the life so much.
That's amazing. We'll like to give Smita and Kausal a quick chance before I
Sure, yeah. So one thing I was always puzzled, why all of a sudden, NVIDIA took a nosedive and so on after announcement of this. But the problem is that, I think some of us know that, DeepSeek also is into chip business, and that is where actually things started happening several months ago and so on. So they made purpose-built AI chips basically, which is what competed better against NVIDIA's general purpose chips actually, and that is where a lot of companies, especially in Europe, thought of using those kind of chips rather than this. So it's not only this, and on coming to reasoning models such as DeepSeek, just answered the question is, you have to see that reasoning is not everything in AI. Reasoning is just a small part that you're going to use the reasoning in the whole agentic workflow or in your processes or in your usage of. So only for that part you have one better in-depth answer, and secondly you are going to have a cost benefit because of DeepSeek, etc. That said, reasoning versus common LLM responses, which are not accurate, takes a far more. So frankly, NVIDIA is not losing its sleep because DeepSeek has come and number of, it's going to bring the cost drastically down. No, in some cases actually, and Jensen Huang, just 3 days ago pointed out, he gave to normal LLM GPT, and the response took like 500 tokens, but the answer was wrong. He long reasoning question to DeepSeek, the answer was like 18,000 tokens or something, but answer was correct actually. So therefore, they're expecting far more. The more it is, more tokens are going to be required. Actually. So that is the nuance that I wanted to bring to the table.
Absolutely. Smita, any closing thoughts before I move to a very important person in the audience who has joined us, and we want to hear his thoughts as well.
No, go ahead. I think Ashish and Kaushal pretty much covered it also.
Please, thank you. So we have, a reputed, a distinguished alumnus of ours who has joined our call, Dr. Pramod. I have tough time pronouncing his last name, so it's probably, I'm hopefully pronouncing it correct, Kharognekar. He is a Vice
Khargonkar.
Chancellor for Research and Distinguished Professor of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at UC Irvine. Dr. Pramod, you are on the, you are here on the call. Thanks a lot for joining the call. Undergrad from IIT Bombay and a PhD from University of Florida, where he was a faculty for a long time, probably with one of our fellow IIT Delhi alumnus, Sartaj Sahni, right? He's also there at University of Florida, Gainesville. And now you are at University of California, Irvine. A couple of years back, we had another alumnus, Dr. Satish Tripathi, was VC at, or Dean of Research at UC Riverside. Dr. Pramod will love to hear, of course, your thoughts on this whole session. Anything you would like to add from your own research perspective, questions that you may have, and even feedback to us to improve ourselves going forward. It's like reinforcement learning for you, from you, but just with rewards, no penalties, So with that.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for recognizing me. This room is full of really brilliant people with fantastic experience. I'm a 1977 graduate of IIT Bombay. I just enjoyed the whole session, and all the chat commentary just teaches me how deep the experience base of this group is. So I don't really have much to add. I think we are in a very, very rapidly evolving world with breakthroughs happening with great frequency. So I'm just looking forward to an exciting future, and having been part of this gathering has been really phenomenal. Hope to connect with many of you over LinkedIn and by email, as I've learned so much from people here.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Pramod. I mean, it's rather a blessing and a pleasure for us to have you here and share your thoughts and, work from there and, listen to you from that perspective. Thank you, IIT Southern California team, for, kind of spreading the word about this event in a way that we could get somebody of his stature here. I want to turn this whole conversation in a slightly different direction, and we'll put one of our own alumni on the spot and talk about the gaming software industry. Ramesh sir, you tell us, what have you been seeing in terms of, interest in application of AI, Gen AI? I would leave DeepSeek, it's very new, but, you have been a CEO of, Ballysoft in the past, and now you're CEO of a healthcare company, an area which Smita is also very interested in and has covered over a period of time. Would love to hear your thoughts, both on the gaming side, as well as to some extent on the healthcare side, the interest you're seeing as CEO of, a multi-billion-dollar firm. And thank you for joining us again. Thank you.
Thank you, Tushar. It just shows that Tushar and I have not been in touch with each other much in the last many years. He doesn't have a great idea of what I'm doing now. Anyway, I've been out of gaming now for more than 10 years, so I can't answer the question much from a gaming software perspective. But I can tell you from hospitality software solutions, that is the non-gaming part of hospitality, which is where I've been now for the last 8+ years as CEO of Agilicis, NASDAQ AGYS. We are struggling with AI, to be honest with you. We are not sure what to do with it. We are an application software company. We do point of sale for F&B and hotel management systems and everything around it, automated check-in, automated services optimization, loyalty promotions, just a whole lot of about 30 software modules in basic application software. And we have sprinkled in a lot of AI wherever possible. For example, it has really helped our coding efficiencies. No question, Microsoft Copilot has improved it by 30-35% or so. So we are doing well there. And in our software modules, we have sprinkled in AI wherever possible. For example, now there's a lot of revenue generation, revenue upselling capabilities that hotels have, both at the time you're making a booking at the hotel and at the time you're checking in. For example, when you're checking in, we know exactly what kind of inventory we have left in the rooms, and the software might offer you a suite upgrade for $45 while it might offer someone else for $90. And based on how things are going, it'll make an automatic adjustment as to what to offer the next hour. So a lot of little things like that we are doing with AI. But overall, setting up an AI center of excellence and making sure we are not going to be left behind is something we are struggling with, right? There is no obvious benefit, it seems like to us, but we need to get a lot better at that. So one of the reasons why I attended this was we are not very sure where to take this. As an application software company that is selling basic application software, not AI solutions, but AI has to be introduced into the solutions to make them better. So we are quite a confused sort of company when it comes to AI.
This group is pretty clear about what we want to do. So if you want to hire folks to help you, play in that space, certainly a lot of resume recommendations would be coming. But
Correct.
thank you for your thoughts.
Anybody is interested in joining us and leading the AI Center of Excellence, that would be a good plug for us.
That will be really great. And by the way, Ramesh sir, the reason I was focusing more on your gaming days is that's the time you used to come to Silicon Valley very often, and I used to have free dinners at your expense. But since you joined the healthcare world, I'd never had many dinners from you on your expense. So if you take me out for a couple of times, next time I'll be very much updated about what you're doing.
Just gotten very busy with the job, and hospitality software, of which healthcare, higher education, hotels, resorts, cruise ships are all part of it, not only healthcare. I will come down soon, Tushar.
Absolutely. I'm waiting for that day. Smita, for the dinner. Smita, you work for United Healthcare, you work for Amgen, and Ramesh sir has a perspective which I completely understand. Asi certainly has a family perspective on AI and drug discovery, which he believes very strongly. I'm not going to challenge that. Smita, from your vantage point, give us one or two specific areas in healthcare beyond what Ramesh has talked about or drug discovery. Remove these two areas. Tell us one or two areas where you think AI, Gen AI, or DeepSeek can be game changer.
So one of the startups that has done pretty well is in telehealth. It's basically
and before you join, one thing, Deepak Bhagat sir, we are coming to you next. So please do not log off. We want you to be on. We want to hear your thoughts on something. So please come back if you're not there. Smita, please go ahead. Thank you.
So for example, in the healthcare sector, you can see something about democratization, say, of giving of say mental health. So you can provide bite-sized kind of therapy to people by using this kind of reasoning model where people, and you can also create a community. So there are startups that are creating that kind of community, using AI to develop small matching algorithms with the mentor and mentees, and coming up also with resources and human-like understanding in a way to give the initial help. So mental health is one of the areas. Then in other medical areas,
and by the way, I certainly need a lot of help there. So let's continue. Very good.
Sure. Then the other areas that like conversational AI assistants that we're talking about. So they have access to, they are learning, they're reasoning, they're learning, and they also have a lot of data that they can pull in order to become trained. So now when somebody wants to these days, doctors in general do not provide you all the information that you need about your your concerns. You have to do research yourself, like WebMD and other places. But conversational AI assistants that that companies are developing, they are equipped to understand your concerns based on your personality and the questions they ask you. And then they can be used in order to give you more detailed answer to prepare you for, say, for a surgery, for other things. So a lot of companies are doing that. Other companies are using AI or Gen AI basically to also test what kind of, like digital twins, right? They're trying to test what kind of an area, what will happen if they did this in software, if they did this product in there. Does that answer your question? So there are like 3 or 4 of them.
It did. And looks like our good friend Deepak Bhagatji is not there, so I will have to move to another question. So, we'll love to hear, we had this discussion, recently.
I'm there. I'm here.
Perfect. Perfect. Please switch on your camera. So we do have a very specific question that you have asked. We'd love to hear your thoughts and then have panelists and others answer it. So one of the topics which we discussed, which Ashish very well explained, was, even if the computational cost has gone down to some extent, it's not like the GPU players will be out of the game, at least for the training purpose. Now comes the inferencing side of the equation. Their CPUs have certainly played a role, but that field is also not that easy. And given that we know you are, an advisor to one of the top companies who are building an AI infrastructure architecture for the inferencing side of the equation, Sambanova would love to. And by the way, before I forget, for those who don't know, and certainly Deepak Bhagatji doesn't need an introduction, but his career in life has been synonymous with growth of Silicon Valley. Hewlett Packard, Sun Microsystems, SAP, you name the companies in their heydays, and he had been leading multiple initiatives in that area, especially from the hardware perspective, building architectures, systems, and services. An alumnus of IIT Kanpur and then masters from Case Western. He has been a friend, philosopher, and guide to a lot of us. So, Deepak Bhagatji would like to get your, first of all, insights into this and any clarifications that you have. And especially one of the questions you have mentioned was, given that Sambanova architecture can execute multiple large language models concurrently, will that have an import, like that's like a composition of experts, right? So will that help with reasoning? Well, I would rather rephrase it is that, kind of doing multiple LLM models concurrent execution, will that help with executing mixture of experts? And that is something which is kind of a dichotomy to extend that, hey, the reason we need mixture of experts is to divide the problem. So, well, first of all, love to hear your thoughts on Sambanova's role, inferencing in general. And Ashish, we are coming back to you to see and listen to you about the execution of mixture of experts. Does it mean concurrent execution of LLMs on high performance endpoint systems, or does it actually mean dumbing down or breaking the problem into such a space that we do not really require large amount of computational power on a distributed basis? We are coming to that. Think about it. Deepak Bhagatji, over to you. Want to listen to you.
Yeah, so thanks a lot. I've been engaged with Sambanova for over a year now for two reasons. One was it has three founders. One of the founders essentially is from Sun Microsystem, from Sun Microelectronics team, and I'd worked with that organization for over 12 years because those processors they used to design used to be brought up in my software lab for workstations and servers, etc. So I know them very well. In fact, 85% of the employees are from Sun Microsystem, and then the other two founders are from Sun Microsystem. The second reason was that they have picked an architecture called data flow architecture, which is unique in the industry. It was being pushed by a professor called Professor Arvind from MIT decades back. Now he passed away 6 months ago. And he's from IIT Kanpur, 4 classes senior to me. And he pushed it, and then Stanford took it over, and then they created this architecture. And it's giving 10 times better performance than NVIDIA. Its energy consumption is 1/10 of what NVIDIA uses. And its data center space is 1 rack versus 10 racks, right? So starting this year, they have started to take it and build the global cloud using those things. And I'm taking them to India also. In fact, yes, 2 days back, I brought in one of the largest data center providers, and the CEO of that data center provider was just blown away when he saw the results out there, and the discussions are taking place right now because industry wants alternate to NVIDIA. NVIDIA is great, but they want alternate because for security reasons, for governance reasons, each country wants to have two architectures, right? So they're beginning to get a lot of traction, and let's see where it goes. And I've seen in last 6 months they're winning all kinds of awards as a result of that. So go to their website and learn more about it. And then if you want to get to know them, I can schedule a special presentation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
I
you see them being a player in the inferencing sector, just to be clear, not in training sector.
Yeah, no, they do have a training one, but they themselves says that if you have a GPU, use GPUs.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So now, before I move to the another person whom I want to give the mic to the floor to some opinion, Ashish, want to hear from you about the questions which I asked you about mixture of experts, concurrent execution of LLMs. How is the dynamics playing out? Love to know your thoughts on that.
I want to share some things that I learned at DeepMind. When we were designing chips, chips take about 3 years to design. And 3 years is an eternity at the pace that we are seeing things progress in machine learning and generative models. So how do we design chips is a fundamental question. It's a slightly long-winded story to share, and I'll put MOEs in context. There was a paper called the Chinchilla Scaling Laws that DeepMind put out, which said that there is a relationship between the number of tokens that you want to train on and the compute or the flops that you will need to train on this. And roughly, they basically said that they established a ratio. So that's a linear ratio. It's a very simple equation that they simplified down and said, okay, now let's make it very simple. It's a linear relationship. So that is roughly, nobody has really broken that linear relationship yet. Now, what are the two, because there is a relationship between memory and bandwidth and compute that you are trying to exploit, and you are establishing like sort of a linear relationship. What are the cases that would be two complete opposites to this linear relationship? One extreme would be that your memory increases a lot, but your compute doesn't increase in the same ratio as your. And the other extreme would be that your compute increases a lot, but memory doesn't increase. I'll give examples of each of these two examples. The memory increases a lot, but compute doesn't increase is MOE. I have many parameters, but not all of them are activated when I'm training or serving the query. So my memory has increased, but my compute hasn't increased in the same proportion as my memory has. We are not seeing the other type of model, which is memory has not increased, but compute has increased. How will that happen? You know that in the transformer architecture, we have blocks, and the input goes from the bottom to the top of the transformer architecture. What if we put a for loop and we pass the same signal through the same blocks n times? So my compute will increase, but my memory in the number of parameters that I have in the model will remain the same. This is roughly how reasoning models work. With this in context, it is unclear, Tushar bhai, whether this model architecture that we have for MOE today is going to be the model architecture in the future. In context of Samba Nova, I could run the same query across 5 different places and do a voting almost, right? So let's say that I'm trying to solve a math problem. We talked about 5 shots, so I could run it in 5 different places at the same time and then do a voting. So the majority is the right answer. But I will incur 5x the token costs also. And from a latency perspective, I need to have some guarantees that roughly they will execute in the same time. Otherwise, I'll have to wait for the answers from all of these models to come out. Now, these models don't produce the exact same number of tokens. So if the response time is once, let's say, it's a very hilarious example, but if you look at today's GPT performance from OpenAI, they roughly take 100 milliseconds to generate a token. Let's say that I have 10 tokens to produce. So that's a second. Now, some model produces 15 tokens, some model produces sometimes the model produces 15 tokens, sometimes the model produces 10 tokens. So it's not really feasible to do this composition of experts for production and low latency use cases, nor will it be cost efficient.
Completely makes sense to us. And before I move to the next gentleman, Smita, see, Deepak Bhagatji has really helped us understand the whole industry through Samba Nova. Now you have to say yes to his event on April 5th. Okay, so let's figure it out. And then I'll let you confirm later. So
okay, I have a comment though that people would like to see. So in our group right now, we are getting into a lot of technicalities, and I'm trying to keep the business wording a little bit more layman oriented. There are a lot of AI novices in our group too, because people who work in industries that are not affected by AI that much, they've learned. So that this discussion is more for like, people who have been using LLMs. However, in IIT SoCal alumni group, we have a primer, AI primer, that is coming up in May, in which we would be taking as to what really is Gen AI and how is it affecting the landscape, and what should be, at a very basic minimum level, in order to leverage it so that you don't feel obsolete. Okay. Sorry,
Makes
I needed
complete
to put
sense.
that plug in because some people
Absolutely.
had reached out about that. So thank you.
Absolutely. And Smita, hopefully people from Northern California can also join. So, we are,
Yes, it's open to all. It's just held by us. So similarly
okay.
like this, and we may be able to be partner with you on this, but
Absolutely.
it's a very, very basic level. Thank you.
Absolutely. Fundamentals have to be there. I want to request Amit Mahajan to switch on his camera, please. Amit Mahajan.
Yeah, hi. Are you
Hi.
able to hear me, see me?
We can't see you, Amit.
Oh,
Switch on your camera.
I thought I did, but
No,
somehow.
there's you must have like the laptop cover on it or something.
Ah, okay. Let me see. It's some problem here. It's not turning on, but let me see if I can join from other one, but that'll take me time.
Looks like your laptop is using Qualcomm CPUs, right? AI chips that you have.
No, this is not. That's the thing.
I had to
I'm
do
using
that.
the Intel one. I should have used the Qualcomm.
So basically, Qualcomm employee using Intel chips. What's going on? By the way, my brother is on the call. I'm not going to call him. Been with Qualcomm for 13 years. So he certainly will be on your side, not mine. And I'll have a tough dinner today evening. But, so anyway, let me start introducing Amit while he's trying to figure out his camera here. An undergrad from IIT Kharagpur in electrical engineering, UC Berkeley Masters in electrical again, and executive management program from Harvard. None of these places would have admitted somebody like me. Has been with Qualcomm for 20 plus years. Is senior engineering leader there. And, I have a question which is, to get your perspective. And again, share whatever you feel comfortable. It's in public news. Qualcomm's dependence on Apple, Samsung, and Xiaomi for their wireless modems as a revenue source is not going to be that active going forward, right? I mean, 53% of the revenue is coming in, and the whole world knows that Qualcomm is innovating based upon public presentations from your leaders like Nakul Duggal and Rahul Patel. You guys are entering into AI in a big way. Would love to hear your perspective beyond just, hello,
Yeah.
Amit? Okay. So hopefully my voice is not reverberating. So Amit, would love to get your sense or perspective, leaving aside companies like Samba Nova and others who are endpoint players with specific chips and all, other players who have good deep understanding of the telecom market, who have been building endpoint products, how to basically how do you think they should be thinking about playing into this LLM market, especially from inferencing and endpoint perspective, keeping in mind that there are other players in the industry, public cloud providers want to play as well. Would love to hear your thoughts. It may, or hopefully it's not directly related to your job, so you feel comfortable sharing it. Whatever you will, we'd love to hear your thoughts, Amit, please.
Yeah, so I think it's clear, and a lot of this is public knowledge. Like you said, Qualcomm is also dabbling a lot into AI, like most other companies. And a good part of that is that Qualcomm has been a chipset provider, not just in the wireless space, like the modem space, but also in the compute space for a long time, for almost 2 decades now. So now the question has been how to leverage that expertise, which has included GPUs and recently NPUs, to get into more into the AI space. So you would have probably seen that as the whole Gen AI wave took over, there's been a lot of effort going on the inferencing side of things in the smartphone space. but also a lot going on in the compute, the PC space, where Qualcomm is trying to make inroads with its new X Elite programs. And then in the IoT space, because a lot of players who are using our chipsets are asking for AI enablement. Now, I think so that has been ongoing for a while. One thing I definitely do see is with DeepSeek coming in, what it really changed, I think, for a lot of people, including myself, is that I think when the whole NVIDIA wave has been going on, the focus was really on performance, not on optimizations. I think DeepSeek put the onus a lot on optimization because they're cost constrained and they wanted to get there. So with that effort,
That's a very interesting perspective, though. Thank you. Please continue. Thank you.
So I think with that happening now a lot of people are focused on this because at the end of the day, like Smita and others said, if I see cost savings, I want to get those because my business depends on them, and now I need to pass those on to my consumers. So a lot of R&D, I think, is now going to focus on optimizing and not just on the high-end performance, which is where I think while I don't know if NVIDIA has a direct threat because the whole space is also going to explode, like they say, a Cambrian explosion, but the players who are not playing in the high-end AI compute space, like NVIDIA, like AMD, Qualcomm, we have other players, Marvell and others. Now they all get an opportunity to play strong in this space. So I think DeepSeek really enables inferencing towards these, other players. I heard about Sambanova. I know there are a lot of other companies working on that.
Makes sense. Okay, so we kind of lost you for a second. So tell me something. When it comes to getting into this whole, end computing and inferencing business that we have from Qualcomm and other companies, when it comes to kind of creating your distinguishing value proposition, and Smita, I would love to hear your thoughts from, more from a business perspective as well. Qualcomm has been known, or for that matter, other companies have been known as niche players in different areas. Katyani is here. She was in Intel for 20 years. These companies are known for, CPUs or modems and stuff like that. They want to get into AI space and play there, right? The challenge is when you go to enterprises, you're not seen as an AI company, right? You're not seen as a player which can be trusted right now. And there are competitors. How do you overcome that barrier? Because kind of winning enterprise businesses, what you call design wins, is not easy. So let's think from that perspective.
Yes, I think that's a really good question because I think it's like, when you, for example, I'll just take a Bollywood movie example, right? If you get branded as a villain, it's very hard to become a hero. And if you're a hero, you don't want to do a villain's job. Some people have done it, but not a lot. So I think, when you have built a brand, it has the positives and then also it comes with negatives, right? So I think in this case, Qualcomm definitely has a strong brand in mobile, in compute, otherwise. But in AI, we are kind of the newbies, if I were to call it, even though we've been working on it for a while. Now, what has been working in our favor, and I think the industry has gotten a good sense of it over the last few years, is that, yes, I do understand you have a good understanding of the compute. GPUs, NPUs, yes, because you have been a hardware company. But beyond that, like NVIDIA is not just a hardware company, in my opinion. The CUDA is really one of the deal breakers when it comes to someone using it. So that aspect, how do you put the enablement layer on top, the framework on top? I think that is also one of the key aspects that we need to work on. And you'll see that in the different business units in Qualcomm, that has been a big initiative over the last few years. So what I would say is you have the hardware, you got to tell people, yes, it can do what you want. You got to build the enablement layer, which the leadership team and the rest of the company has been hard on working, both organically and inorganically. We've made a lot of acquisitions. And then it's things like DeepSeek, which come in where, you are not as, tops heavy as NVIDIA, but you can still do a great job at some of these devices which are going to be proliferating at the edge. So I think those three things are coming together strongly now. That's the way I feel about it.
No, that's really good. So what we'll do is For the first time, I think with AIML Forum and now partnering with Southern California, we can see even after 2 hours, we still have 100 attendees on the call. I am pretty sure this can go for the whole day. But I do have a tax return appointment coming soon. I'm being very selfish. So let's start thinking about wrapping this session slowly and slowly. So closing thoughts, starting with you, Assis, from your deeply technical perspective and this IITian audience always loves it. Otherwise, they think it's a marketing program. So would love to hear from you. Kausal would love to hear from you about, your next venture, where you're seeing, what you're thinking, what's going on. Smith, I would love to hear your thoughts from more from a strategic perspective in terms of, how companies should try to reposition themselves as an AI company. So Assis, over to you to, of course, cater to our deeply technical IITian audience. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just make two quick summarization comments. One, nothing is a done deal at now. Have an even keel when you hear these announcements that something is going to take over the world. Nothing takes over the world in a second, and nothing changes like so. If you look at the leaderboards, every week you will see a new player. That means that it is not settled what is going to happen. You'll have to continue to learn. And secondly, so that is what I would say to the AI adopters and who are very gung-ho about this. And what I would say to the people who are not in favor of AI, or they are like, hey, this is not doing this, don't underestimate the power of yet. Whenever you see something that AI cannot do, just add the word yet at the end of that sentence.
Makes sense. I love it.
Over time, it will get there. The important thing is there is a lot of people who are working to make this work. And eventually it will work. How do you create a system that works? See, the business problems that we have to solve are not changing. AIs are like, all of these are shiny tools. Everybody has the ability to access it now. We are wowed about it. So there is a fair amount of novelty effect that is going on still. And it will continue for a little bit before disappointment starts setting in. So if today you focus on what value or what business problem or what actual customer problem or user problem you're trying to solve, life will still be okay in the long run.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Kausal, please go ahead. We'd love to hear about what you're thinking of doing going forward and how you see, some of these things playing out.
Exactly. Yeah. So, being the eye of the storm, so to say, for last years, having my own AI startup. So I wanted to get into the space of nurturing startups. For one, second is advisory to enterprise. And like Ashish mentioned, no single thing can all of a sudden change the course of everything, right? So, and when I look at the enterprise experience, probably core of my expertise at the moment, and going forward I want to leverage that. You see it, first of all, people, technology is just 10% of the things. Being IITians, we think it is 90% or even 95%. My own learning, at least coming from startup world, going into large enterprises, helping large enterprises, is 90% is about people and processes and security. Once you start looking those, that is when people start to look at. Theoretically, if you see, oh, I have a business value proposition and client is going to jump and implement, that's not going to happen. The way now I advise, I say that look at low hanging fruits first, get your teams familiar with the idea of AI and how AI can benefit. If they are not going to be convinced, the amount of business value is not going to be pushed down the line. So you need to be aware of that. That is what the approach. And like Ashish mentioned, you cannot, as technologists, especially this group, you cannot stay away on the sidelines. I have met several people and very few asking me the question, should I wait for this to mature and then get to it? No. If you want to take advantage of DeepSeek today, you can see it that people who can take it have already experimented with the technologies, have already built the architecture. They just need to plug one particular thing to DeepSeek and probably a little bit of reasoning architecture, and they have the foresight to see, okay, this is where I need to use DeepSeek into it. They are the people who have been already working hard for the last 2 years. They're in a position to take advantage of DeepSeek, not the people who are starting now are going to face challenges from the team, and people are going to say, oh, are you going to do it in Azure? I know only AWS, or vice versa, and so on. So that is where preparation, being at the forefront, adapting it continuously is going to play a critical role. That is where I wanted to, I want to shift my focus into advising companies which do not have enough relationship with large CSPs to get access to people who can advise properly strategically. Yeah.
That's great.
Sure.
And Smita, as usual, we'd love to get your strategic insights into the way you see the dynamics is coming, especially what you are listening and hearing from the CXOs of companies, VCs, and who's of the world. So please, Smita, over to you.
Okay, so they're different perspectives from people depending upon the sector they are in. And so for a small startup who is branded, say, as a medical company or another company, for them to venture into AI, again, there are two things. They can automate the internal processes and be an AI enabled there, or they could be outside that they are the ones, they want to be known as AI enabled medical shop. Then they have to start slowly putting some stuff that would AI enabled to their clients, but they can't really rebrand themselves from being a medical company to be an AI company. It is medicine with AI. It's an assistant to them. Again, so that is for like small businesses and companies and startups that they are doing. Startups can do much more because they don't have that much of they can rebrand themselves much because they're very nimble and they can change very well. Bigger companies, again, the AI, if they start using Insight and they make it like how their software, their products are companion products, that the products that they provide, then there's a companion product that's AI enabled. How is it helping? How is it much better? So the customers, they know that they are true to their brand, as well as they are trying to, so, they are the ones that are, they are moving ahead with the technology. So my clients like Cisco and DirecTV and others, they're also, the AI strategy is not just to be branded as an AI company. They have their brands. And then you move on to what AI enabled additional parts are you giving. So that is the perspective of how the companies would perform. The investors now. The investors are right now in a wait and watch mode a little bit because there's been like an explosion of activity since people started realizing the innovation capabilities that they can, based on DeepSeek, it has, it has opened like a flood of innovation for people. And people, investors who were currently investing in companies to create lots of money to get to use OpenAI model or Llama model, and they want to also try as to what a cost-effective model can do. So many of the investors, especially angel investors and VC, are in wait and watch mode along with it, but they're still excited about investing in AI companies. So they're partnering with them. They want to see how we would be able to leverage all these things. So again, it's like a transition period in a way, but people are very excited about it, still a little bit skeptical.
Makes sense. Thank you, Smita. Thank you. I want to turn over the floor to the gentleman who heads IIT Southern California, now a dear friend of mine, Priyank Saxena. Priyank, as all of you know, is a graduate of IIT Kanpur. He works in a very interesting industry, renewable energy. I used to work in that long time back. So, Priyank, over to you to close the event. Want to thank everybody who has joined. Please, over to you, Priyank.
Thank you, Tushar. What a great experience. Thank you to you, all the panelists, Ashish, Kaushal, Smita. Thank you all for sharing your knowledge with us. I feel blessed to be part of you in this group. And whenever I have to learn something new, I go back to IIT. I seek their help. And I did that in the past to learn aerospace engineering. And now, with the new need to learn AI so that I don't become a dinosaur, I'm coming back to my IIT brothers and sisters again, and IIT family. It's my IIT away from India. So thank you. And I hope, and I thank you all the participants here for this amazing engagement. The Q&A was fantastic. We will have our recording available so we can review and refresh. Also, I would like to thank all the volunteers who are working behind the scene before the event and also during the event here, so that we can produce a world-class event, which is benefit to all of you. I'm benefiting from these events that are amazingly organized by the SoCal team. And I would like to welcome everyone here. This is a platform for all of you. If you want to organize any event, if you want to become a part of our volunteer team, please come join us. We have our LinkedIn page. Please follow us. We have our WhatsApp group. Please join us and bring ideas. We are here to work with you and create bigger events. Please mark your calendars. On April 5th, we will be having our own Abhi Mukherjee and Ravi Bhagwan, seasoned VCs and PEs, who will be teaching us how to value companies from the investor's perspective. You can find this registration link on our LinkedIn page, and it's there in the chat if you want to become part of our community. Until then, I would like to say, stay safe, keep learning and shining, making us, all of us, proud, and have a great Sunday.
Absolutely. And, you know, everything which Priyank said, I completely agree with it. And Ashish would agree, Ashish Bansal, we can add Global IIT AML Forum to it. You guys are welcome to join. Smita, Sekhar, Kausal, all of them are part of it, as along with Ramesh Srinivasan and probably more than half of the attendees. So you all are welcome. It's a virtual forum, free of cost, over Slack and WhatsApp, top people across the world. So we'll love to partner with you, with Southern California, as well as others who are interested in joining. This was great. Smita, you wanted to add some closing thoughts, please, it seems?
No, this was a very, very enjoyable event along with Global IIT AI and ML Forum. Tushar and Ashish, thank you. So we want to do more of these, and maybe once in 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, we'll do something that we should bring in, and loved the audience energy also on this one. So
Absolutely. We are always there. Thank you, my friends. Feeling a little
We
hungry.
want
To get a
people
feedback at
to
home.
have their camera turned on and take a picture,
Yeah,
screenshot.
guys who are there, please turn on your cameras so we all can walk into Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Please,
Finally,
with the
my camera
panelists
is
and the
turned on, but
organizers.
it's from a different ID, A Mahajan. So this is Amit Mahajan again. But...
Absolutely. We trust you, no matter what ID is. We trust you.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Nikhil. I'm from University of Maryland, College Park.
Nice to meet you, Nikhil.
Yeah.
Please. So
Who's
anybody's taking, Dhananjay, are you guys taking a
I'm
picture?
trying to take a photo. I'll request everybody to look in the camera, smile, and
give a smile even if you do not like us, please.
Yeah, all right. So people are still trickling in. Sure, I'm taking the photo right now. 3, 2, 1. Done.
With that, everybody has walked into Hall of Fame with Smita and Ashish.
Thank you
Thank
so
you, my
much.
friends.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.